Voice of Change News.
This is Voice of Change Radio, the news read by Amanda Kumalo. A quick look at stories making the headlines. Dilapidated Mbare houses declared a state of emergency as government moves in to give new line area a facelift. In business news, RBZ announces new measures to stabilize prices exchange rate. In regional news, Zimbabwe, Egypt step up economic diplomacy. In sports, Zimbabwe, England mend cricket relations. The news in detail. Mbare's new line area has been declared a state of emergency by the government, which has subsequently ordered that devolution funds be redirected to refurbish housing, sewer systems, and enhance garbage collection in the area. Families in the most dilapidated houses will be profiled and provided with temporary shelter while the houses are demolished to pave way for the construction of blocks of flats. This came out during the post-cabinet briefing yesterday. The decision comes as the Second Republic makes concerted efforts to combat the cholera outbreak, which has seen Zimbabwe recording over 2,000 cases and 15 deaths so far. Treasury and the Ministry of Health and Childcare have since been directed to expedite the release of funds to facilitate a comprehensive response to the cholera outbreak. Speaking at a post-cabinet media briefing yesterday, Acting Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, Dr. Jennifer Muskwere, said the Harare City Council had deprived residents of service delivery, hence government's decision to intervene and act on the serious health hazard. Minister Muskwere said the Ministry of Health and Childcare has now been directed to ensure health and safety in the area. In other news, all those who want to observe the forthcoming harmonized elections on August 23 must now apply to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. President Mnangagwa recently made it clear that Zimbabwe had nothing to hide, as the country had put everything in place so as to ensure the election is free, fair and transparent. The deadline for applications to ZEC is August 18, 4 days before Election Day. Moving on to business news. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, RBZ, will from today start selling foreign currency on the interbank market through commercial banks, with the foreign currency auctions now limited to $5 million a week and transactions of between $1,500 and $50,000, largely in a price discovery process. This comes after Finance and Economic Development Minister Professor Mthuli Ncube late last month announced a set of policy measures to upgrade the whole foreign currency trading and pricing system, including minimizing the auctions as a method for importers to access foreign currency so the burden moves to banks and direct earnings. RBZ Governor Dr. John Mangunja said that the new measures were calculated to ensure that the interbank forex market became the primary source for foreign exchange needs in the economy. This overtakes the auctions that have carried the burden for just under 3 years since the middle of 2020. In taking measures to address issues affecting the economy, the MPC noted that the prevailing volatility in the exchange rate emanated from both supply side and demand side factors. In news beyond our borders, Zimbabwe and Egypt are stepping up economic cooperation for mutual benefit, with a meeting between Vice President and Minister of Health and Childcare, Dr. Constantino Chiwenga, and Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli yesterday, laying the foundation. VP Chiwenga is in Cairo for this year's Africa Health Excon, which was officially opened by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi amid calls from stakeholders for Africa to close ranks in the quest to build resilient and sustainable health services. While attending Excon, which brings together leading manufacturers of medical consumables and pharmaceuticals, specialists and government representatives, VP Chiwenga has economic diplomacy functions in his itinerary. The economic diplomacy is informed by and seeks to promote President Mnangagwa's Zimbabwe's open for business strategy, through which authorities are angling to grow the economy through fostering private sector investment and participation. And finally, in sports news, England are planning to host Zimbabwe for the first time in more than 20 years, marking the resumption of cricket ties between the two nations, and could invite the African nation as well as Bangladesh to play Test cricket at Lord's in the coming years. England have not hosted Zimbabwe since 2003 and last played them in any bilateral series in 2004. The cricketing relationship with the boards was marred by the political situation in Zimbabwe under the previous regime, with England withdrawing from their match there in the 2003 World Cup. The UK government has subsequently instructed England to avoid playing Zimbabwe, but political relations between the two countries have improved somewhat, and several other nations have been to Zimbabwe for pre-season tours. Inviting Zimbabwe for a test match at Lord's would mark the resumption of cricketing relations between the countries. That brings us to the end of this bulletin.
Voice of Change News.